Well, good afternoon, America. We've been traveling far. Just got back on RT1 from New Hampshire, there where I had a root in the winners. Bernie Sanders, trounced Hillary. Too bad for Hillary. Really feel sorry for her. Such qualifications and everything, just being ignored by the American people is just astounding. I mean, here's a lady that was in charge. I guess she had a pretty big position in the Bimbo Eruption Squad there in the Clinton administration. How we could not just support her wholeheartedly for President of the United States after her great job, too, as Secretary of State when she got off that plane that time in Bulgaria or wherever she was, and she had all that under fire and the big attack that she had to go through there to get to safety. Of course, that was after she got handled the roses and everything with the greeting party and so forth, I guess. I don't know where all the firing was coming from. I didn't see it on the video of the news reports, but anyway, she was under
Oh,
attack.
I think that more information came in. I think that story was somebody's dream. That was part of an American's dream or something. I don't think that ever happened.
Oh, well, I
But
thought I was.
that's just somebody else's take on what happened that day.
Oh, I was counting that as qualifications for her to be president. So, are you saying maybe that was just a dream? That she doesn't have any qualifications? Oh my God! Maybe that's why she lost the primary in New Hampshire. I didn't know that. Apparently, there's about 50% of the people in the country that didn't know it either. I mean, my goodness, all these people voting for what they thought was the most qualified woman, or maybe they're just trying to not to go to hell. Especially if you're a woman, you have to vote for Hillary. You're going to go to hell, according to Madeleine Albright, another famous Secretary of State. There was a obscene failure, in my opinion. But at any rate, uh, quite the show there in New Hampshire. Quite the show on the Democrat side of the equation, because look at who they prop up there to be somebody that you could compare Hillary Clinton with. That was a plan of the Democrats to pick the worst possible person they could ever think to put up there, because they had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to find anybody worse than Hillary Clinton, who was the anointed one. I think they had to run her because they owed it to her for some reason. That's the way the Democrats think. They're all owed something. That's the successful Americans that work hard for their money and produce something of value, and people buy it and so forth, and creates an expanded productivity for the United States. The liberals, they're all owed that money. You didn't build that, as Obama likes to say. Everything was given to them by the government, according to Obama and Hillary. No entrepreneur has ever created anything. Then Obama goes around the world and apologizes for America, the country that's always there, and any disaster that happens, we're the first ones there lining up to help. But of course, that doesn't count for anything in Obama's world. We're the monsters. We need to pay reparations for all our damages that we've caused to the world. Pretty despicable people. We need to kind of pay attention and look at the results that we get with these liberal policies. They're absolutely pathetic, and they don't work. And here we are with this group up there on the Democratic stage vying for president. I don't think there's ever in the history of the world been a more pathetic people running for an office than those two. Look at the Iowa caucuses. Those people were so confused on the Democratic side of the thing, they couldn't decide which one was the worst or which one was the better. So they came out within 0.0000002% of one another, or whatever the number was, and then they had to flip a coin to figure out who won. And then if this doesn't show you the way the liberals and the Democrats and the Clintons really operate, somehow they rigged the coin toss. Hillary won 6 out of 6. Now, how do you do that? It's amazing. That goes against all odds. I'd like to know how they rigged that one. I guess maybe they used the old proverbial two-sided head coin, I guess. I don't know. But quite the outcome of an election when you have to flip a coin. And I saw a cartoon in the paper the other day where they had two donkeys there. I guess that symbolizes the Democratic Party, which is very appropriate in my opinion, donkeys, you know. And they were flipping a coin, and one said, what do we, heads or tails? Well, we're trying to figure out if Hillary's going to be indicted or not. So they were flipping a coin. Well, that's the way they decide the Iowa caucus. So I guess that's the way they decide whether you're going to indict Hillary or not. It comes to a flip of the coin, because God forbid should it be, the law being upheld or something like that. That doesn't work in America. That's not been the system for a long time. The lawyers and the judges have hijacked the entire legal system to where it's an absolute joke now. It's just a joke. There's nothing right about it. There's nothing true about it. There's nothing that works about it. It's just an absolute joke. And anyone that partakes or goes before any court, especially in Nevada, for anything, you can go before a court in Nevada and ask for a decision on something as simple, I guess, I don't know, going to school or your kid going to, that gets all screwed up, where a judge has to rule that you can't have money to send your kid to school because they're charging you taxes to educate your children. You don't agree with the way they're educating them because it's all backwards, and we have the worst education system in the country. So you're paying all these property taxes to educate your kid. You don't agree with it, so you want to pay for your own kid's education and send them to a private school. And well, they can't give you any money back to educate your own kid, even though you're not going to use the system that they set up for you, which is all liberal-oriented and, indoctrination and brainwashing. You can't have that. We have to use the money so that we can get the kids indoctrinated to the liberal way of thinking so that they can vote for candidates like Hillary and Bernie. A perfect example, the high quality of candidates you get from the liberal side of the aisle, just overwhelming. These guys are so friggin' qualified, you have to flip a coin to figure out who's the worst. It's just absolutely astonishing. The polls in New Hampshire were reflecting the Republican side of everything. They had Donald Trump, I remember some polls around, 33%, something like that. I think he ended up with 35 or somewhere in that neighborhood, 34. So that poll was pretty damn accurate. And then all the other polls seem to come pretty true, too, from what I can gather. And it's amazing when you talk the truth and reality and so forth, how accurate you can get. When you talk devastation and crap, like the liberals and the progressives put up there, you just get devastation. I don't know what it's going to take for the young people in particular to wake up and smell the roses instead of the marijuana that they got stuck in their mouth. But something's going on with the young people where there's been brainwashed so bad. They just have to, I don't know if it's even possible to wake up and just look, just take your eyes, clean them out, get those fumes out of your eyes and see what you see. Look at the liberal policies, look at the liberal cities, look at the way these people make their constituents live. In California, for example, big liberal mecca, you can't have a barbecue in your backyard, you can't use a leaf blower, you can't do all these things because of the environment. Well, why don't you go watch a volcano erupt sometime and see what kind of destruction that leaves on the face of the planet? And we seem to survive those to a certain extent. It doesn't destroy the world. But to hear a liberal talk, blowing your leaves out of the way, out of the driveway, is going to cause devastation. And now here's another perfect example, in my opinion, of a policy coming from a liberal. Like Insane what's his name again? Barack Insane Obama? Well, anyways, he is insane. But anyways, now he's proposing a $10 a barrel tax on oil. Now, I guess the time's right because the price of oil is never right, but the price of oil is $27 a barrel. So genius Obama thinks, hey, if we up the price to $37 because we tax it $10 a barrel, the price of oil was $100 not that long ago. Nobody will notice that we've, slipped that in there. What a great way to raise money. That's kind of like a Nancy Pelosi policy in a way. Unemployment's great. For every dollar we spend, we get $1.79 back. I don't know from what planet that comes back from, but we need to send Nancy Pelosi a one-way ticket back to that planet and get her the hell out of this country because she's a real joke. But here, think about this, you liberal millennials or whatever you call yourself out there, going to college trying to learn something about economics. Here's one for you: a $10 a barrel tax on oil. Now, does anybody out there, any of you kids in that college, that everything's free for you? You know, you get free this, free that, free education, free, whatever. Everything's free. There's no, you don't have to earn anything. You're all going to be taken care of from cradle to grave. Does anyone think that a $10 tack on to the price of a barrel of oil is not going to be paid by everybody that fills up their car with gas? Where's that $10 going to be paid for? Do you think the oil companies are just going to eat that and say, oh, well, we can't tack that onto the price of a gallon of gas? That wouldn't be fair. BS, folks, BS. What a stupid regressive policy. And what does that do to the middle class, Mr. Obama, Mr. famous middle class savior of all time, riding in on your white horse? You're a jerk. Okay, anybody that will propose such a goddamn plan as that needs to be taken out in the rose garden with a paddle. And I hope the paddle puts you in your grave, because what a stupid thing to put forth to the American people. You're an idiot. Amazing idiot. But it just overwhelms me that this is the type of president we have, if that's what you want to call him. I call him an idiot in chief. But that proposal, you young college students out there, you millennials, whatever your name is, that walk down the street and Jesse Waters can't interview you because all those birds are floating around in your head and the music coming out and no answers to anything. I mean, just think about that. Where is that $10 going to come from? I can't think of a more stupid proposal ever. This takes the cake. Global warming's pretty friggin' stupid. Oh, we have to spend trillions of dollars so that the temperature of the earth somehow is not going to go up 0.2% in the next 100 years, or whatever this proposal is. How would you even stop that? If you took every dollar, every asset in the world, and changed it into money right now that you could spend on defeating global warming, how in the hell would you stop that? Could you tell me? It's impossible. Whatever the hell it is, you know what it is? We are slowly getting sucked into the sun. If anybody ever went to a class with the planets and all this stuff, all the planets end up sucked into a sun, whatever sun they are revolving around. What do you think fuels the sun? It takes, jillions and jillions of years, but that's what happens. We're getting closer to the sun. That's a normal event, okay? If you don't like it, go move to Mars or wherever the hell you think you're going to be first one signed up on that spaceship. Maybe save space for Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, because you deserve each other. This is the type of policies. Can you imagine raising $10 on a barrel of oil? What a friggin' idiot. Explain to me how that works economically. How does that treat the middle class? How does that treat you when you have to go to work every day and get your check, which all the money's taken out of right up front before you even see it? You have the Social Security, you have the FICA, you have the IRS. Everybody's in there attacking your check. And then the idiot people don't realize, how expensive your taxes are, because you never see it. There's a deduction, I guess, on your check somewheres, but whether you can read or not, it's debatable. But what a foolish thing to propose to the American people. Idiotic is the explanation for that. That is the stupidest goddamn thing. And if you people can't see that, I feel sorry for you. It blows my mind. What a fool. Anyways, I guess I got to get off that. I could talk about that forever, because that is just so stupid. Can someone call me up and tell me what's not stupid about that? 702-493-5222. This is a call-in show. It's like a forum. You can say whatever you want to say. Just call up. Let us hear you, hear it the herd, and we'll become a group of people that can communicate through this show and put out your ideas, put out your solutions. It just blows my mind when this country and a lot of the people that exist in this country have been dumbed down so much that you even pay attention to such a liberal idea as a $10 a barrel increase in the price of oil tax. I mean, that, you know what? That shouldn't even have been published in any paper in the country other than Obama's lost his friggin' mind. I don't think he ever had a mind, but that shouldn't even be reported to the American people because it is so friggin' stupid. I mean, what an idiot this man is. What a complete fool. You know, we need to produce things in this country. We need to create wealth. And then if we create wealth and expand that boat, the rising tide lifts all boats. And this is the way that makes the world go round, to where we can have a country that survives for the long term. Most other countries that have preceded us have gone down the tubes in a couple hundred years because of their own weight. You have a government created to manage the people, if you will, and this government doesn't make any money. What it does, it robs from Peter to pay Paul, and Paul's the voter, so they have to rob from Peter, the productive person, to pay Paul so they can get votes to stay in power. And how do you run the government? Where does the money come to run the government? The money comes from productive people that actually make something and produce something that people want to buy. That's what runs the government. The government steals that money from the productive people, and they do their programs. They do this. They do the roads. They do some things that matter, but to do those things, they have to hire people and have infrastructure, and they constantly, they need health care. They need this expense. They need a pension. They need all these benefits and so forth that they give to the government workers, the bureaucrats. It used to be that you'd work for the government as kind of like a community service in a way. You were doing good for the people by working, and you didn't do it as a career. Maybe you went and ran for office. You got a 2-year or a 6-year term, and then after that you went back to your community and did whatever you were doing to start with. But now these politicians have a taste of power, and they become entrenched in their jobs to where they wouldn't leave. If you take them out of office, they kick and scream the whole way. You have to shoot them to remove them from office, basically. Or they have to die on the floor of the House, where they get taken out on a stretcher because they get so attached to the tit of the economy of the government and the paycheck that they sign on the back of their check to get this money from the government. And as government is there, it exists, they have to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to pay for the increased bureaucracy that feeds and feeds and feeds off the productive people in the country. And as a result, what happens is someday you're going to have to face reality that everybody can't work for the government because there won't be anybody left to pay for the government, because the government doesn't make anything. They don't produce a single nickel. They never have, they never will. They are incapable of managing anything. They don't know how to do things. A whole system of a bureaucracy doesn't work, where you have 10 people to do one person's job, and the paperwork and the BS that you go through just to requisition something. And then the government, the whole structure is just unlike any productive company in the world. You'd go flat broke in a second. You'd never make it. When you have a budget in a company, you have to live with that budget. You can't print money when you run short to pay your bills. You have to work with what you got, or you go broke and you go out of business. So the question becomes, how much of this paperwork, how much of this bureaucracy can you put up? And then what does the government do? They have a budget, supposedly, although it's the funniest Washington math budget you've ever seen. But let's say you have a budget and you have this increase in expenses and so forth. Well, if you have a department operating within your budget, the leader of that department, they have a certain X amount of dollars in their yearly budget, and they have to spend that money, because if they don't spend the money, in other words, if they ran their department more efficiently and they got by with less over a year, they would get less the following year. So their mindset, being a bureaucrat, is we have to spend all the money that we got this year so we can get more next year. Because if you ever ran on what your budget was, you'd get the same thing the following year. Well, that's not the way government works. Government's supposed to work opposite of reality. And sooner will we realize exactly what government is, and we teach that in schools, by the way. We need Government 101. We need to teach our children that are being educated in our elaborate school system. We need to change everything there. We need to get classes one class that I'm proposing through the herd here and our solutions is to have a Common Sense 101, CS 101. We're going to teach to our students common sense. Open your eyes, see what's going on, pay attention, identify what's real, what isn't. I could teach a class in common sense, no problem. And I think that the class would be productive. I think the students that finish that class would have a sense that would last them their whole life, that you couldn't fool these people anymore with smoke and mirrors and the stuff the government tries to slam down your throat. Like Nancy Pelosi, unemployment makes $1.79 for every dollar we spend. What kind of idiots are these people? What kind of idiot proposes a $10 a barrel tax on oil, which is going to go right to everybody that has to use a car in this country? I mean, could anything be stupider than that? We're still in a recession. I don't care what the Washington math shows, like a 4.9% unemployment rate, which was the biggest joke, misinformation I've seen in a long time. What a joke that is. There's 94 million to 100 million people that can't find jobs, unemployed. Now, there's only 300 million people that work in the friggin' that are in the country. So if 90 million aren't working, what does that come to? I'll guarantee it's a hell of a lot more than 4.9%. But everything that's published, every number that comes out of a government in Washington, D.C. is a phony number. It's misstep. And the numbers that come out in a liberal administration are really crazy. They're obscene. They're so far off reality. And it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's all to not be truthful to the American people. If you ran a company the way that Washington and the congressmen and senators and the president runs this country, you would be in jail because you're not truthful to the American people. Look at Obama with his $2,500 savings in his famous health plan, which even the health plan is a misnomer because there's nothing about health with it. It's forced mandatory insurance is what it is. It has nothing to do with care. It's forcing the American people to buy insurance. And when you force something, when the government throws their fingers into any pie, the pie becomes a big friggin' mess. And the cost of that pie escalates exponentially. It goes through the roof because anything the government touches doesn't work. And here we've allowed Obama to hijack our health insurance plans and costs and so forth. 6 or 7% of the GNP goes to health care. And for this government to be involved in that, it's going to go to 20%. And I think we're seeing the evidence of that in premiums and whatnot that are being delivered currently. And the whole system of this Obamacare is going to go flat on its face broke in the year 2017 is the projection. Now, Obama, what did he do after he put this plan in effect with all Democrats? When he got elected, he had both the Senate and the Congress under his control. And that was brilliant on the part of the electorate, but that's a story for another day, I guess. And what happened was not one Republican, not one conservative voted for any of this crap. But you had Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi working verbatim with Obama, and they slammed this crap down our throats. And they did it by maneuvering and falsehoods and changing and buying senators and the Husker deal and the Louisiana Purchase and all this crap. They had to bribe a certain amount of elected people to get this junk pushed on the American people. and it's never going to work. And then Obama, he did when he got elected. He stole from the stockholders of GM, stole all their equity, and gave it to the unions. I don't know. I don't understand that for a second. Why is that not a huge lawsuit? And maybe it is, but you sure don't hear anything from the mainstream media about it. But everything that the man touches, he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And he takes the health industry, destroys it, and then what does he do? Everyone has mandatory insurance now or pay a fine. Well, the unions, one of their biggest expenses is health care. So they were going to get hammered on this legislation. So they bitched to their boy, the SIU or whatever the name of that alphabet soup of that organization union was, going to the White House like 50 times. And they were having big meetings over there, and the devastation that Obamacare was going to cost. Well, what does Obama do? He just exempts them for a couple of years till after he's out of office. That's all he did there, was just give them an exemption. So that took care of that little union problem. So, how can you be any more illegal? How can you run a government any more distorted than what this guy's done? And we, as the hens sitting around the middle class, the bulk of the American people, allow a clown like this to destroy this country. And why do we continue to put up with this? We should have grabbed our sickles and our guns, what have you, whatever we have at our disposal, and we should have marched on Washington, D.C. a long time ago, because this should not stand. Every year that you let this devastation go unchecked, it's going to cost 2 or 3 or 4 years just to get back to where you were this year. He's devastating this country. His plan is to ruin this country. And that's exactly what he's doing. Like Rubio's point that he was trying to make in the last debate was Obama knows exactly what he's doing. That sounds like, bad, but the truth is he does know what he's doing. Nobody can even flip a coin and get everything wrong as much as Obama's got. Every single thing that he's done has been 180 degrees in the wrong direction. Now, how does he do that time in and time again? He knows exactly what to do to ruin this country. And he does it day in, day out. He never makes a mistake. Everything that he does has a plan to it. And his plan is to ruin this country. And this is how he's been successful. Everything that he's trying to jam down the throats of the American people have pretty much been done. He has a few more things to do. He wants to raise the price of oil, $10 a barrel. That's absolutely absurd, obscene. And the more money, has anyone ever noticed, the more money you give to the government, like my budget little deal I went over before, that every department has to spend more money every year. Well, they get the same amount of money. Well, they can't live with that, so they have to get more and more and more and more. And the government's just a monster that you have to keep feeding. So it doesn't work forever. It's going to collapse. And someday the American people are going to have to wake up, and we need to take back control of this country. And one way to do it, we can't really start at the top on most cycles, because the top is politicians, people that get elected by promise you in a rose garden and end up just stealing everything from you once they get in office until the next election cycle. And then all they do is make false promises and so forth. And then that doesn't come to pass. But so what? They get to steal and steal while they're still in office. And then they run for the next cycle. And then they lie some more and lie, and then get you to reelect them to the same devastation. So anyways, that's what we're up against.
2 down.
Absolute devastation.
2 down.
2 down.
Christie and Fiorina.
Gonzo?
Gonzo.
Oh, well, I just got a news flash from my street reporter. Has just come back into the office. He's been out in the street interviewing people. And apparently the news flash is Christie's now not running anymore. He's decided to take a holiday from the election. And Carly Fiorina is also out. So 2 down. So that at one time was one of our news reporters around here, the editor-in-chief, Rolando was backing her wholeheartedly for a little while there until Trump said that he didn't like her face. Oh no, that may not have been it. I may be mistaken, but she was his favorite for a while because he liked policies. And Carly Fiorina was saying the right things, and especially about excuse me, especially about Hillary Clinton. I mean, Fiorina was right on about her, and what a despicable person she is. Well, anyways, it takes money to run an election and so forth, and this isn't the season for most of the Republican people running because Donald Trump has changed the game. He has put a new ball into play, and he's the one that has the ball, and nobody else seems to be able to catch up. And that's a good thing because we need somebody like Donald Trump, who's a businessman background, not a politician, and somebody that can take the ball and win with it. He knows how to run a business. He knows how to run a country. These politicians that we elect, what qualifications do they have to run a country? Can you tell me? They can't run their own lives, let alone run a country. Look at Nancy Pelosi, and she's one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. What the hell does this broad know? She has to pass a bill so that they can read it and find out what's in it? I mean, can any more stupider things be said? I mean, these people are morons. Donald Trump has said that, I think, almost from day one, that we are led by very, very stupid people. And I don't think anything's ever been said by anybody running for office anyway that's been more true than that. How many people will go out there and say that the people running this country are stupid? I've been saying that for years and years, and they are. These people are out and out morons. And that goes for both sides of the aisle. This John Boehner, he wasn't any prize to speak of. I couldn't understand how he got the job to start with. Mitch McConnell, he's a flamer, if there ever was one. I lost all respect for him back during and he was in the Senate then, when Clinton was being impeached. Some news reporter or commentator or whatever they were called asked McConnell a question about whether Clinton should resign or not. Now, here's a guy facing impeachment or was impeached, and somebody asked McConnell if he thought that Clinton should resign. And what was his answer? Well, the president hasn't taken that position yet, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, hello? Since that second that came out of his mouth, I said, that guy is a moron. He should have pounded his fist on the table and said, of course he should resign. Since when has this country lowered itself so much that we have a president in the Oval Office being serviced by an 18-year-old intern? Of course he should resign if he had a head that he could even hold up anymore, which he didn't. But no, this McConnell had to cover for him. Well, he hasn't taken that position. I mean, what stupid kind of answer is that? These politicians are nothing but a bunch of bozos, and they all need to go. Every single one of them. This country has been destroyed, a combination of multiple things. That, and us hens, we sit back and we let it happen. Well, all I can do, I'm just one guy, but I'm going to be on this radio and I'm going to be putting out there what the hell I think about it. And if people are listening, fine. There's a lot of shows out there you can listen to. A lot of the least Republican and conservative shows talk basically the same way I do, although I do have some issues with a few of them that seem to now and then get off track. They seem to lose sight of what the real issue is. And some of them, I think, have a tendency in a way, depending on whether they get a paycheck for somebody, they sometimes get their thoughts a little bit distorted, or they become puppets for whoever they're working for. And I think more and more I'm seeing some of that appear as obvious on Fox News. To name one, Megyn Kelly, I don't appreciate that woman anymore. I think she's a bought and paid for hack that spiels out the problem with the mainstream media. And I think Fox News and Megyn Kelly has become part of that. And you've got an agenda there that they do not like Donald Trump because Donald Trump threatens their very power base. And that threatens them. They want to be able to control everybody. They want to be able to control who gets elected president. And you're not going to have that with Donald Trump. Nobody is going to control that man. And that's the reason that I've supported him from day one. The second I heard that he was running, I said, thank God. I mean, this is the type of person we've needed for a long, long time. And we need him now. If there was ever a need, we certainly have it after the devastation we've been through for the last 7 years. And we need to straighten this country out and at least get us back on the right rails, leading away from the cliff instead of towards it. So we have hope. Donald Trump, he's a movement. I hope will be able to get a lot of people off the couch to go out and vote for the first time, because that's what we need. We need to get new people at the polls that haven't been distorted with listening to the mainstream media. That's just a bunch of liars, really, that we've been distorted there for a long, long time. And we need to open our eyes, and we need to use our common sense, and we need to listen to what the people are saying out of their mouths, not listen to what the mainstream media says about them. Don't listen to what they reiterate that you supposedly said. Listen to the candidates, see what they said. A perfect examples are some things that Donald Trump has said. He made a comment that we should pause letting any of these refugees or whatever into the country until we can vet them and find out who the hell they are, where they came from, what kind of history they have, and so forth. And boy, oh boy, did the mainstream media just use every single excuse they can use to trounce on the guy, because they don't want him. Simple. They want establishment people that they can control. And it's as simple as that. It doesn't get any simpler than that. And Donald Trump is the antichrist of what they support. And that's a good thing. To me, somebody with common sense, I like to think, can recognize the fact that he's absolutely the best candidate possible at this particular time, because he's totally untouchable. No special interest guy or whatever is going to control Donald Trump. You're not going to get what you want. It's going to be a different deal in Washington, D.C. Only good plans get through. And these people with agendas, they might as well get their reservation for a U-Haul truck now, because come next January, U-Haul is going to be a little busy in the Washington, D.C. area, because all these people are going to be moving out of town, thank God, and I hope to hell they never get to come back. But in this world that we live in, the voters, the people that this country was founded for, are going to have to start making some big policy changes and make sure that the reason that we were founded becomes back to a reality, and we stop this progression that we're on, where our Constitution is overlooked or crumbled to nothing, because the basis of the Constitution was to check and balance the power of these elected officials. And of course, the people that we elect office, they don't like the Constitution because it's a check and balance on them and their power. So they want to get rid of the Constitution, an amendment at a time. And they're under attack. The guns are under attack. Everything that Obama and his pen and phone don't like is because it's a check and balance on him and his power. And we need that. In this society, we need to check these people that we elect, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we're seeing the signs of this every single day in this country. And we need to stop it in its tracks, and we need to make it enemy number one in this fine country of ours. And then we can get the country back. With Donald Trump's leadership from the top down, we can go a long way to restore this country to greatness. And from the bottom up, we have to pay attention. Don't sit on your butt after you get Donald Trump elected. Let's have town halls. Let's have meetings. Let's continue to support Trump and his endeavors. And let's make sure, for God's sakes, that we never let this country slip back into the controls of the progressives and the liberals again, because they are destruction. They are a cancer on our country that we cannot stand. We just cannot allow them any power, because They're despicable people. Now, what do we do about that? One of my number one solutions on the herd is to make political parties illegal. They are corrupt organizations. We need to get together ourselves, the people of this country, and demand that the Supreme Court, or however we're going to do this, ballot referendum or whatever, we make those political parties dinosaurs. We make them illegal. So they're gonzo. You can't have an organization such as a political party because what do? They take the votes that Americans have a right, constitutional right to vote, and they void out your votes because they steal the elected officials that you elect. They steal them, they hijack them, and they get them indoctrinated into the special interest groups, and then the people that you elect do not represent you anymore. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. We need to get rid of the political parties and a combination of certain things like electing a real leader like a Trump, getting rid of both parties where people run for office, Senate, Congress, whatever office they're running for, they run in their name. They no longer have to run as a Democrat or a Republican, and they run as a person that the constituents that vote for them know them or whatever, know of them, and they can back the particular person, not a party. The parties are destructive. They're terrible. Now, we were talking earlier about what is a superdelegate. We heard that, Hillary lost her ass the other night in New Hampshire, but somehow she comes away with more delegates than Bernie Sanders. Now, one asks, how can that be? Well, it's because the Democratic Party, as I'm sure the Republicans also, because they're both corrupt organizations, but the Democrats have 750 what they call them superdelegates. Well, what the hell is a superdelegate? What is that? A superdelegate is somebody that doesn't answer to the voters. He only answers to themselves, and these people are elected, if you will, or put in power as a superdelegate because of who they are. And they could be an ex-president, they could be an ex-congressman, an ex-senator. But if you're a Democrat superdelegate, obviously you're controlled by the Democratic Party or they wouldn't have put you in power. So they've selected you as a superdelegate, and no matter what the people vote in all the states and their nomination process and everything, you get a vote any way you want to. You don't have to follow the vote of the people. Now, that's not a free society. That's not the way our founders envisioned this country. As a matter of fact, our founders didn't even provide for political parties. They said they're very dangerous things. They thought by not putting them in the Constitution that would protect the country from such a animal ever propping up. But whatever's not delineated in the Constitution becomes up to the states, and all the states have gotten whatever, and they've elected Democratic and Republican committees in each state, and then that filters over into now a national committee and for the presidential elections. And this is what we need to do away with. We need to do away with these political parties because they are corrupt. This corrupted organization ever existed. The mafia is not as corrupt as these organizations. And we need to snuff them out because they're not productive for this country. We need the Constitution to come back 100%. If there's a law in the books, we need to uphold that law. We need to make sure that enforcement officials that have a duty to uphold the law, everybody takes an oath of office, and it basically says they're sworn to uphold the law of the land. Well, nobody does anymore, especially if you have another official, another enforcement officer breaking the law. No other official will ever hold a comrade accountable for anything. That's just the way it is. It's nature, I guess. But it's the way that they run their show, and they need to be thrown out of office. If you have somebody not doing their job, they need to come to work the next day and find that their key doesn't work anymore. We need to go around. We need to be a bunch of locksmiths, and we need to change locks. And when somebody breaks the law or they don't do their job, they don't enforce it, We need to make sure that their key doesn't work in their office anymore. And they're out of work. That's it. They're out. Now we elect somebody else. After we go through a few cycles like this, the people that in office, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do their job, or they're not going to be in office, and they're going to catch on pretty quick. And when you have a law in the books, you have to enforce it. And you have to make sure that the law is properly enforced. We have a principle in this country called who has the burden of proof. Now, in a criminal case, someone who supposedly broke the law, the government has the burden of proof to prove that they broke the law. You have rights. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, that's been subject to a lot of abuse lately, where prosecutors and so forth have to get a notch on their belt, and there's a lot of people in jail that never did what they were accused of, but they got convicted of it because the prosecutor is either running for re-election or they have to get a big name for themselves or whatever. So, and they'll never admit that they made a mistake. If it's proven later through DNA or whatever kind of evidence pops up that they found someone guilty that wasn't guilty, they will never, ever, ever admit that they made a mistake, ever. These are political hacks, okay? And their reputation, it has to be, they have to protect their reputation. And they will never admit that they made a mistake, ever, 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 ever. And that results in people that did not commit a crime to be serving time behind bars. We have people in this state here that are serving time behind bars that are well known to be innocent because some of them that weren't even here when the crime was committed. But they get thrown in jail anyways because the prosecutors got a notch on their belt and made a big name for themselves. And a lot of people know that these people are innocent, but nobody does anything about it. Now, I heard that on the other day, Channel 5, local channel here, had put on a couple exposés about a couple of DNA cases where the prosecutor wouldn't allow the presentation of DNA evidence that would have exonerated the party that was convicted. So they just don't allow the evidence. Is that fair? Is that right? No, it's not. The judicial system is absolutely in shambles, and it's been caused by a bunch of lawyers, and judges are just ex-lawyers. That's all they are, and they became judges primarily because they couldn't make a living as a lawyer. So they wanted to go for the paycheck. And we pay our judges between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, and that's probably the worst money that any state's ever spent because you just get incompetence. You get complete incompetence. Now, I was talking about burden of proof. In a criminal case, you're innocent until proven guilty, and the government has the burden to prove you're guilty. But when the government is the one that wants the notch on their belt, and they have all the power and all the money, all the investigators, all the police working for them and everything else, believe you me, they could prove a ham sandwich guilty. They could prove anybody guilty because they have all the wherewithal to work for. So if you get accused of something, all these lawyers run around, they tell you to just settle the thing and cop a plea because that's the easy way out, and that's the easy notch in the belt for the prosecutor. And so as long as he gets a conviction, he doesn't care how he got it. And the system's broken. It's absolutely broken. Now you take a civil case, you have the burden of proof. The court is supposed to establish who has the burden of proof. Well, here's a good example. Let's take a simple case like mine, in a way, concerning a cashier's check. You go to a bank and you buy a cashier's check. You give the bank good money. You gave them value. You gave them cash, whatever. There's no question of what you gave them was good, or they wouldn't give you the cashier's check. The burden to make sure the money they got is good is on the bank. They have to make sure that they accept your value for what they're giving you. And what they give you in return is a cashier's check. And that cashier's check is guaranteed by the bank and their credit that they stand behind that check. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the person that paid good money for that check. It's just that the bank has been paid for issuing that check, and now their obligation Their burden is to pay that check. Very cut and dry, a simple business transaction. Here's X amount of dollars. You give me a check back for X amount of dollars. Now, what the purpose for that check is, it eliminates the need for the buyer, the person that bought that negotiable instrument, to carry the check for whatever business transaction they're going to do instead of carrying around cash. Cash is dangerous. You can get rolled. You can get robbed. You can get in an accident. The cash could burn up. You could get incarcerated for whatever reason, and the cops could steal your money. And they say, "What money? We didn't see no money. What are you talking about, money?" I mean, there's so many things that can happen. So you protect yourself, and the system's protected by the convenience of having a cashier's check, which is an alternative to carrying cash. So the burden is on the bank. Once they take your money, they've given you a check, and now the burden is clearly on the bank that they must pay that cashier's check, period. Okay? Now the bank doesn't pay the check. Or let's say that a judge someplace signs an order saying that to the bank that the cashier's check's been lost. Well, what if the bank knows who has the check is the person they gave it to, is the person that gave them money for the check, and they know the person, they've gotten correspondence from the person saying that they have the check and that this judge is crazy and he's doing things without jurisdiction and blah, 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 but they don't pay any attention to that. They just say, well, if we get an order from the judge saying the check's lost, then we're going to have to reissue another check. Well, that would be fine if that was all that was involved, I guess, but that's not all that's involved. The bank has a statute, an obligation, before they ever would reissue a check. Remember, they have the burden here. They have the burden to pay that first check. If someone says the check is lost and it has legitimately been lost, well, then there should be some system set up to where they can reissue another check to the remitter, the last person to have the check. It has to be in somebody's hand when the loss occurred. It has to be in the holder's hand. Somebody that's entitled to that check had to lose it, and that's the law. Well, in a case like mine, where I have a judge saying to the bank that the check's lost, which is fraud, it's false, the check's not lost, I have it today, I've always had it, the bank knows I've always had it, so a crime's been committed here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Who has the burden? The bank has the burden. I don't have the burden to go to a court to have the court determine that, oh, I do have a cashier's check. No, I do. You want to see it? Here it is. I don't need the court to tell me I have a cashier's check. As a matter of fact, I have bank documents saying that the check in your possession is no longer good. This came from the bank. Why did they come from the bank? Because the bank got an order from the judge saying the check's lost. Well, the bank knows the check's not lost. So who has the burden here? They have the burden. Well, being a court of law and robbers of the money, being the burdens on them, they're not going to hold themselves a burden on themselves, so they just ignore it. And then what do we have here in this state of Nevada, this fine state? We have an appellate court now, brand new. They've only been in operation for less than a year. And they decide that even though Judge Earl signed an order saying the check was lost, which is false, they say, well, that doesn't have any bearing on this because I didn't bring it up while my case was going on. Prior to me getting the cashier's check, prior to the judge saying it was lost, prior to the check even being issued, I never brought it up, so then I'm not timely now because I didn't bring it up then. Well, listen, you idiots, the check wasn't existing then. I have the check now, not then, you morons. And you are an appellate court in this state? You need to be disbanded. You are a total illegal adjudicated body, and you need to go. You're not competent, period. And that's what needs to be done. And I'll talk about that more as time goes on because, to tell you the truth, I'm pissed about it. When you have a court of law in this state and the court of law cannot even read or understand the basics of Law 101, they need to go. We can't have a court like this. We have enough problems with our courts. We don't need to exasperate the problem with incompetency where you have kindergarten students that would do a better job.
the streets is thee.